Before there were names, before the first whisper of language, there was a continent that carried the heartbeat of all beginnings. It was vast, sunlit, and eternal Africa. Long before it became a word upon maps, it was a living rhythm, the soft pulse of rain on red soil, the shimmer of heat upon endless grass, the song of wind weaving through ancient valleys. Here time moved slowly. The earth turned beneath a young sun that poured gold upon the land. Rivers thick with memory wound through savannas where life gathered in quiet abundance. Herds moved like drifting shadows. Trees stood as witnesses, their roots deep in stories that had not yet been told. This was the cradle not of nations, not of history, but of being itself. Everything that would one day walk, dream, love, or speak began here, wrapped in the warmth of the African light. The mystery of human origins is not a tale of conquest, but of patience, of how a single continent held the perfect balance of challenge and nurture. Why Africa? Why here and nowhere else? The answer lies in the tender dialogue between earth and life, a whisper older than words, older than fire. Imagine standing there 2 million years ago. The air is thick with the scent of rain, the horizon trembles in the heat. Every breath you take feels like the first breath ever drawn. There are no cities, no roads, no language, only the sound of insects and the slow rhythm of your heartbeat echoing against the open plain. The soil beneath your feet is dark and rich ancient volcanic ash layered with the memory of fire and water. It was on this soil that the first upright beings took their tentative steps. Not yet human as we know ourselves, but something between dream and awakening creatures who began to see beyond the next meal, beyond the next shelter. They began to wonder. Africa was not simply a place where they lived, it was the architect of their becoming. Its shifting climates tested them. Its abundance nourished them. Its vast distances invited curiosity. Every drought, every flood, every new horizon carved something into their bones. Resilience, creativity, and the seed of thought itself. In other parts of the world, the earth slept under snow and ice. Forests were dense, mountains harsh, and the land too unforgiving for the delicate spark that was human potential. But Africa was alive in a way that fed imagination. It demanded adaptation, yet offered reward. It changed constantly, and in that change, it sculpted intelligence. The rhythm of survival became a rhythm of evolution. Each generation, shaped by the turning of seasons, became more attuned to the world hands, stronger eyes, sharper minds, a little more awake. From the gentle sweep of the Rift Valley to the echoing caves of South Africa, life unfolded like a long exhale. And so, in the hush of deep time, the story of humanity began, not with an explosion, not with a sudden spark, but with a steady kindling beneath the African sun. The earth, in her quiet patience, crafted the conditions for life to think. From the warmth of the equator to the cool highlands, from the dense forests of the Congo to the open plains of East Africa, she painted the perfect canvas, a living laboratory where change was constant yet never cruel beyond endurance. Here our ancestors learned to walk, to gather, to share, to look at one another not only with instinct, but with recognition. They began to feel not just hunger and fear, but connection. In the flicker of an ancient sunset, in the reflection of another's eyes, something stirred that would, on the first light of humanity, rose not in silence, but in the soft chorus of life around it, the cry of distant birds, the rustle of grass, the call of water over stone. And above it, why did life choose Africa for this miracle? Perhaps because the continent itself mirrors the heart of existence, unpredictable, generous, full of contrasts and possibility. Its landscapes are both gentle and fierce. Its cycles are eternal. It teaches through rhythm, through the coming and going of rain, through the blaze and renewal of fire, through the endless migration of creatures following invisible paths written into the earth. In this place, every struggle had purpose, and every adaptation was a step toward consciousness. Over millions of years, the land itself became a teacher, and its lesson was survival through transformation. Even now, when we close our eyes and breathe deeply, there is something familiar in that rhythm, the slow, patient pulse of the world that raised us. Every cell in our bodies remembers the warmth of that ancient sun. Every breath we take is shaped by the same air that once stirred across African plains. Africa is not only our origin, it is our mirror. It reflects what we were, what we became, and what we continue to carry within us, a story of endurance, curiosity, and gentle awakening. And as night settles over that ancient land once more, the winds still carry the same soft music that greeted the dawn of our kind. Somewhere deep in the rhythm of the earth, that song continues the first lullaby of humanity. And so our story begins in the cradle of warmth and dust beneath a sky of endless blue, where the first question was not spoken but felt. Why here, why us? A mystery that still echoes through time, whispering across the ancient bones of the land, waiting to be remembered. Long before history, before the notion of years or centuries, the earth itself was in motion, shaping and reshaping the world that would one day give rise to us. The story of our beginnings does not unfold in a single place, but Africa was the great stage upon which it all began. It was a continent of transformation where shifting plates lifted mountains, where rivers carved deep valleys, and where the climate itself danced between wet and dry, lush and barren, in a rhythm that would sculpt the mind of humanity. In the heart of East Africa, a deep scar runs across the land, the Great Rift Valley. It stretches from the Red Sea down toward Mozambique, a vast fracture in the Earth's crust. Here, in this cradle of instability change, was the only constant. Volcanoes breathed ash into the air, lakes came and went with the seasons, and grasslands yielded to forests, only to retreat again when the rains failed. It was in this restless place that the first true ancestors of humankind began to appear. They were not yet like us, but not so different either. The earliest among them, Australopithecus afarensis, stood upright, their faces framed by sun and dust, their eyes reflecting both fear and wonder. In the sands of Ethiopia, in a region called Hadar, a skeleton was found. Her name, given by the scientists who uncovered her, was Lucy. She had lived over 3 million years ago. Her bones told a simple truth: she walked on 2 legs. That single adaptation, standing upright, would change everything. To walk on 2 feet was to free the hands. To free the hands was to explore, to touch, to carry, to create. And to see farther across the savannah was to dream farther too. Lucy was small, barely over 1 meter tall, but she carried within her the seed of a revolution that would unfold slowly, patiently over the course of 1 million years. Her world was one of transition, part forest, part plain. The trees still offered safety, but the open ground offered possibility. Predators prowled, saber-toothed cats, massive hyenas, ancient leopards, yet the reward of venturing out was vast. To move upright meant endurance. To endure meant survival. As time passed, the earth shifted again. The forest thinned, the air grew drier, and the rains came less often. Where there was once green, now there was gold. Endless stretches of tall grass swaying in the hot breeze. This changing land demanded more than strength, it demanded thought. It was here around 2 million years ago that a new being emerged, Homo habilis, the handyman. He was the first of our genus, the first creature who began to shape the world with intention. Among the stones of Olduvai Gorge in Tanzania, archaeologists have found the evidence simple tools, chipped and sharp, fashioned from volcanic rock. These tools were not random, they were deliberate. With them, early humans cut meat from bone, broke open marrow for its rich fat, and began to see that the world could be altered to serve life. In the slow rhythm of this discovery, something profound was stirring. Hands once used only for climbing now learned precision. Minds once focused on survival now glimpsed imagination. A simple flake of stone marked the beginning of all technology, the first echo of everything that would follow. Africa watched quietly as her children evolved. The land offered both challenge and guidance. Every drought that killed the weak made the clever stronger. Every migration to find water tested endurance and cooperation. And over the ages, this slow, unending dance between life and land shaped not just bodies, but minds. By 1.8 million years ago, another transformation took place. A new being arose, Homo erectus, taller, stronger, more purposeful. Their faces were less ape-like, their bodies built for distance. They could walk for hours, even days, across open terrain. They were wanderers, explorers, children of movement. Fossils of Homo erectus have been found across Africa, from Kenya's Lake Turkana to South Africa's caves and beyond, in Asia, in Indonesia, in China. They were the first of our kind to step beyond the continent of their birth. But it was here in Africa that their story began, and here that their character was forged. The world they knew was not a gentle one. Lightning split the skies, herds thundered across plains, and predators stalked the night. Yet Homo erectus learned to tame one of the most mysterious forces of all, fire. In the caves of wonderwork deep in South Africa, layers of ash tell the tale of early fire use nearly 1 million years ago. Fire meant warmth in the cold, light in the dark, protection from the beasts that roamed the night. It meant cooked food, softer, richer, easier to digest, feeding not just the body but the brain. Fire was not only survival, it was transformation. Around the glow of the first flames they gathered, they shared meat. They watched the sparks rise into the darkness. And perhaps though language was not yet born, they began to communicate in ways deeper than words, through gesture, through gaze, through shared silence. In those moments, a kind of humanity began to take shape. Africa's shifting climates continued their patient work. Periods of warmth gave way to chill. Rainfall patterns changed. Grasslands expanded and shrank like the beating of a heart. And with every rhythm, those who lived here adapted. Brains grew larger. Hands grew more capable. Families formed, communities bonded. No other continent offered such diversity, deserts, mountains, forests, lakes, all within reach. Every challenge demanded invention. Every environment offered a new lesson. It is no wonder that evolution favored Africa. It was not only the land's fertility, but its unpredictability that made it the perfect crucible for intelligence. In the constant shift between scarcity and abundance, life learned flexibility. Where the world never stood still, thought itself was born. Imagine the scene 2 million years ago as twilight fell across the plains. The air shimmered with heat fading into coolness. A group of early humans sat near the embers of a dying fire. The distant sound of insects filled the night. Above them, the stars began to appear, countless and cold, unblinking witnesses to their fragile existence. They did not know their names. They did not know the word Africa. But they knew belonging. They knew hunger, comfort, companionship. And deep within something, wordless curiosity perhaps stirred toward awareness. The discoveries of modern science have only deepened this wonder. From Ethiopia's Afar Triangle to Kenya's Kubifora, from South Africa's Cradle of Humankind to Morocco's Jebel Irhoud fossils, tell a story written across deep time, a story of continuity, of gradual becoming. At Jebel Irhoud in the Rocky Hills near the Atlantic bones were found that looked almost modern, over 300,000 years old. Their faces were familiar, their tools refined. These were early Homo sapiens, the first true humans already standing where the winds of the Atlantic met the sands of the Sahara. It was here in Africa that modern humanity emerged, not from a single place, but from a network of connected regions, sharing ideas, genes, and survival across thousands of miles. Evolution was not an event, but a conversation between land and life, climate and creation. Africa was not merely the setting of that story, she was its author. The warmth of her equatorial sun nurtured the body. The instability of her seasons honed the mind. The vastness of her plains called the heart to explore. In every cell of who we are, in the color of our skin, the shape of our hands, the rhythm of our gait, we carry the imprint of that land. We are all of us children of her soil. And though our ancestors would one day leave crossing deserts and mountains to spread across the world, the memory of their first home remained. It echoes still in our bones, in our dreams, in the quiet pull of the unknown that drives us even now. Africa, the birthplace of humanity, was never just a beginning. It was a lesson in balance between danger and opportunity, between loss and renewal. It was the first teacher, the first muse, the first mother. Every discovery we make, every fossil unearthed, every tool uncovered brings us closer not only to understanding where we came from, but to remembering something deeper, that we belong to a story far older than our names, our nations, or our time. The wind across the savannah carries that truth, still, soft, patient, eternal. And if you listen closely beneath the hum of the modern world, you might still hear it. The voice of the earth whispering, "You began here. You always begin here. Always begin here." The dawn of humankind was not a single sunrise. It was millions of dawns, each one a little brighter, a little closer to awareness. Across the shifting plains of Africa over countless generations, life continued its quiet experiment. The land and its creatures were patient sculptors, shaping mind and body through challenge and time. The first true humans, Homo sapiens, emerged not as conquerors but as survivors. They were born into a world of constant uncertainty, where the rains could vanish for years, where fire swept the plains without warning, where predators moved through the grass like shadows. Yet, in that uncertainty, the human spirit took root. Every adaptation that had come before, upright posture, strong hands, keen eyes, the capacity for endurance, prepared them for what would follow. But something new was awakening now: imagination. The ability not only to react to the world, but to see beyond it. Imagine yourself standing on the African plain some 200,000 years ago. The air is cool after a night of rain. The scent of wet earth rises like memory. The light of dawn spreads across the horizon, golden and infinite. A small group moves silently through the grass, men and women, elders and children. They are lean and alert, their feet bear their movements, graceful. They speak in sounds we would not understand, a music of clicks and murmurs, gestures and glances. Yet the meaning is clear: cooperation, kinship, purpose. They know every sound, every shadow. They read the world the way we read words. The tilt of a bird's wing tells them where water lies. The pattern of tracks in the mud speaks of herds that passed at dawn. They are scientists without books, artists without tools, philosophers without language, their knowledge stored in memory and instinct, shared across generations through story and imitation. For them, survival is not war against nature. It is participation within it. They live in rhythm with the land, moving with the seasons, following the migration of animals, gathering roots and fruits when they ripen. Their fires burn softly beneath the stars, the same stars that have watched every generation before them. In their world, time is circular. The past and the future flow together like water. Life is not separate from the earth. It is an expression of it. Somewhere in the depths of their minds, a spark grows the awareness of self, of others, of something greater. They begin to carve lines in bone, to arrange stones in patterns that have no practical purpose. They decorate their bodies with ochre trace handprints on cave walls. These are not acts of survival, they are acts of meaning. Art appears not suddenly, but like a slow dawn. In the caves of Blombos in South Africa, fragments of ochre etched with cross-hatched lines tell of minds capable of abstraction. In the dark halls of Namibia's Apollo 11 cave, small stones painted with the forms of animals whisper of imagination at work. The human brain, larger now than ever before, begins to dream. They start to bury their dead, not merely discard them, but place them carefully with tools or shells beside the body. This is the birth of tenderness, of memory, of spirit. To mourn is to know love. To bury is to acknowledge time. And so as millennia unfold, thought becomes more layered. Humans begin to remember, to plan, to tell stories. A hunt becomes a lesson. A storm becomes a tale. Through story, the past survives, and through it knowledge flows. At night, when the sun sinks behind the hills, they gather around the fire. Flames flicker against faces painted with soot and light. Sparks drift upward like tiny stars. Fire is more than warmth now. It is a teacher. It draws the tribe together, holding them in the gentle orbit of its glow. Here language takes shape. Here laughter and rhythm and song are born. The first storytellers speak in gestures and sounds, their voices rising and falling like the wind. They mimic the roar of lions, the rush of rain, the call of the hunting bird. Through these sounds they pass wisdom, where to find water, how to track the antelope, which plants heal and which poison. The tribe listens, children wide-eyed, elders silent, and in this circle of listening, humanity becomes something more than animal. Knowledge becomes memory, and memory becomes legacy. The brain, fed by fire-cooked food and shaped by shared experience, grows more complex. New connections form. Thought deepens. Empathy blossoms. The species that began as survivors are becoming dreamers. For hundreds of thousands of years, Africa remained the home of all humans. But the climate, ever restless, began again to change. Rains shifted south. Grasslands withered. The Great Lakes of East Africa rose and fell. And with every shift, people moved, following rivers, following herds, following hope. Some of these wanderers, curious and restless, began to move north. Through Egypt's ancient valleys, across the green corridors of the Sinai, they drifted into lands beyond their birth. This was not an exodus, but a continuation of the same rhythm, the slow pulse of migration that has always guided life. Out of Africa, they went into Arabia, Asia, Europe, yet the continent remained the wellspring of all that they were. Those who stayed behind continued to thrive, adapting to every environment the earth offered, from the dense forests of the Congo Basin to the dry deserts of Namibia, from highland plateaus to coastal shores. Africa's diversity became humanity's blueprint. Every shade of skin, every shape of face, every form of culture and expression, all began here, evolving in response to the great variety of the land. To live in Africa was to live in dialogue with the elements, The rains were both giver and taker. The sun was both healer and destroyer. The earth was not a possession, but a companion, unpredictable, sacred, alive. Our ancestors learned not to dominate, but to listen. They watched the cycles of plants, the migrations of animals, the phases of the moon. Their lives were attuned to natural harmony. In that awareness lay wisdom, the foundation of all future science, philosophy, and faith. They spoke to the world through reverence. A successful hunt was honored with thanks. The first rains were greeted with song. To walk across the land was to walk upon the body of the mother herself, the ancient soil that had shaped their bones and nourished their lives. As groups grew larger and more complex, cooperation became survival's greatest tool. Humans learned to divide tasks. Some hunted, some gathered, some crafted tools or tended fire. This sharing of purpose created the first forms of society. From cooperation came compassion. From compassion came culture. They began to care for their injured and their old, an act no other species carried to such depth. The weak were not abandoned, they were protected. This was not merely kindness, it was understanding. That the strength of one was bound to the strength of all. The tribe was not just a collection of individuals, but a single living organism bound by trust, memory, and love. Around every fire, every night, the same truth glowed quietly in their eyes. We survived together. Through the ages, evolution continued its patient work. Brains expanded, faces grew finer, voices became more capable of tone and nuance. The larynx descended, speech became possible. With language came names for things, for places, for each other. To name is to define, to understand, to create order from chaos. With words, they could share what they could not show, dream what they could not see. Language was the first great bridge between minds, the first invisible architecture of civilization. From that bridge, everything else would one day arise: myth, art, science, memory, love. Even as early humans began to wander, Africa remained the center of their world, the pulse to which their evolution beat. Fossils found in the Homo Valley, the Clayseas River caves, and the Rift Valley tell of generations who lived and died, hunted and gathered, adapted and thrived. Each footprint pressed into the ancient mud left a mark on time itself. Each stone flake struck by a hand echoed the birth of creativity. Each gaze at the horizon hinted at a longing that would never fade, the need to know what lies beyond. That longing is still within us. It is the quiet hunger that drives every exploration, every art, every question we ask of the universe. It is the inheritance of Africa, not just of blood, but of wonder. The story of evolution is not one of triumph or hierarchy. It is a story of balance, of constant becoming. We did not rise above nature. We rose through it. We are its continuation, its voice, its memory given form. And so as the stars turn once more over the endless plains, as the wind whispers through the same grasses that brushed the legs of our ancestors, one truth remains. Africa is not the past. It is the beginning that never ends, that never ends. The story of humanity is the story of movement, slow, patient, and inevitable. For hundreds of thousands of years, the winds of Africa had whispered to her children, teaching them to follow the rhythm of change. The earth shifted, and they shifted with it. The rains moved, and so did they. Curiosity became their compass, endurance their strength. And so began one of the most profound transitions in all of history, the long walk out of the cradle. But this was no single moment, no sudden departure. It was a tide, a series of small steps taken over tens of thousands of years. Groups drifted outward, following rivers, north-crossing valleys that are now deserts, wandering through green corridors that have long since turned to sand. Their movement was not conquest, but continuity and extension of the same pulse that had guided every generation before them. The turning point of our species was not a single invention or event. It was a realization that the world was vast and that it could be known. Imagine the African night 100,000 years ago. The moon hangs low over the dunes of the Horn of Africa. The air is still, the world vast and silent. A small group gathers near the edge of the Red Sea, men, women, children, their eyes reflecting the flicker of firelight. Across the narrow waters lies land Arabia, faintly visible beneath the silver haze. They do not know that they stand on the threshold of history. They only know hunger, curiosity, and the call of what lies beyond. The tide is low. They wade through shallow channels, carrying bundles of tools and food. The salt stings their skin. When they step onto the far shore, they do not realize they have left their birthplace forever. They walk onward, guided by instinct and starlight, not knowing that their footprints will one day stretch across the entire planet. Those first travelers were few, perhaps only hundreds, perhaps less. But over generations, their descendants spread outward, following rivers, coastlines, and plains. They crossed into Asia, wandered into the cold lands of Europe, and much later reached the farthest corners of the earth. Everywhere they went, they carried Africa within them, in their blood, their memory, their fire. To leave Africa was to enter a world of contrasts, frozen tundra, dark forests, mountains wrapped in mist. For the first time, humans met environments utterly unlike those of their origin. Snow replaced dust. Pine replaced acacia. The light of the sun dimmed, filtered through the northern haze. To survive, they had to change, not in heart, but in body and habit. Skin adapted to new suns. Diets shifted to new foods. Tools evolved to meet new challenges. The same creative spark that once shaped stone in Olduvai Gorge now carved bone and ivory in the caves of Europe. Everywhere, the human mind adapted not by domination but by imagination. They learned to sew clothing from hide, to build shelters against the cold, to store food for the long winters. In the caves of France and Spain, they painted the walls with images of animals they revered and hunted, horses, bison, deer, each line drawn with care and awe. To create art in darkness was to declare that life had meaning beyond survival, and yet, even as they transformed, they never ceased to carry the rhythm of Africa's lessons, the rhythm of patience, cooperation, and adaptation. The earth itself became their teacher now, as it had always been. Its mountains taught endurance, its storms taught humility, its vastness taught wonder. Around every fire in every new land, humans remembered their origins in silence. The stars were the same even if the ground was different. They looked upward as their ancestors had done and saw the same constellations glimmering above unfamiliar horizons. In that reflection, the unity of humankind persisted, invisible but eternal. It was during these ages of migration and transformation that language truly blossomed. What had begun as simple sounds and gestures became elaborate systems of meaning. Through language, memory became durable. Stories could survive beyond a single generation. Knowledge could travel faster than footsteps. A hunter could describe the path of an unseen herd. A mother could warn her children of dangers she herself had never faced. Through words, imagination became shared reality, and with imagination came identity. People began to see themselves as part of something larger, a tribe, a family, a lineage. From this awareness grew the earliest seeds of culture, ritual, and belonging. Around every firelight circle, humanity learned again and again the same lesson: we are not alone. We are connected to one another, to the land, to to time itself. But the path of evolution is never one of peace alone. The same curiosity that drove exploration also brought peril. New lands held new dangers, diseases, predators, unknown climates, and sometimes even other humans. When early Homo sapiens reached Eurasia, they met others who had arrived before them, the Neanderthals, children of an older migration. These ancient cousins had lived for hundreds of thousands of years in Europe's cold forests, their bodies strong and well-suited to the chill. For a time they shared the earth. They may have exchanged tools, gestures, perhaps even laughter. They may have looked into one another's eyes and recognized something, a kinship distant yet undeniable. We now know that they shared more than just a moment in time. They shared blood. Modern humans still carry traces of Neanderthal DNA, a quiet reminder that our lineage is not pure, but intertwined. Evolution, it seems, is not a single thread, but a woven tapestry complex, beautiful and full of forgotten hands. Yet as the ages passed, the Neanderthals vanished, as did many other branches of humanity. Not through cruelty, but through the quiet turning of fate. Climate shifted, populations thinned, and the last of them disappeared into memory, leaving behind bones, tools, and the faint echo of who they once were. Their loss, too, was part of the turning point, a reminder that life endures not through strength but through adaptability. Back in Africa, life continued to flourish. While their descendants spread across the globe, many humans remained rooted in the vast diversity of their homeland. Over millennia, Africa's populations adapted to their unique regions, from the humid rainforests of Central Africa to the high plains of Ethiopia, from the deserts of the Sahara to the lush coasts of the East. Each group, each language, each culture carried forward a piece of the ancient story. Even as the world beyond evolved into civilizations and empires, Africa remained the quiet heartbeat beneath it, all the origin that never ceased to give. The people who stayed did not remain frozen in time. They innovated, traded, journeyed. They shaped tools of iron-built societies, created music and myth that would one day flow outward again, enriching every corner of the earth. From the Niger River to the Great Lakes, from the dunes of the Kalahari to the Nile's eternal flood life, pulsed in rhythms as old as the sky. Africa was not a chapter in the story of humanity. It was the book itself, the unending source from which all stories spring. Through all these transformations, through migrations and meetings, through loss and renewal, one truth became clear. Humanity was not simply a species evolving upon the earth. It was the earth itself, learning to see. With each generation, with every adaptation and idea, the planet looked upon itself through human eyes. The rivers, once mindless, now flowed through the veins of beings who could name them. The mountains, once silent, now echoed with song. The stars, once unobserved, now became symbols of hope and destiny. Africa, where this awareness began, remained beneath it all, quiet, unchanging in her patience, ancient as the heartbeat of time. Everywhere we go, we carry her within us. Every discovery we make is a memory of what she taught us, that survival is balance, that beauty lies in impermanence, that the world is vast, but never separate. This was the true turning point. Not the moment we left Africa, but the moment we understood her. The moment the mind turned inward, saw its own reflection in the world, and whispered, "I am." From that awareness came everything that followed: agriculture, art, belief, civilization. Yet beneath all our progress, the rhythm of our origin still hums soft and unbroken. The same curiosity that once drew us out of Africa still drives our eyes toward the stars. The same endurance that carried us across deserts still guides us through the challenges of time. The same quiet wonder that once looked upon fire still burns in our imagination. The human story, though scattered across continents and cultures, remains bound to one truth. We are the children of one earth, one sky, one beginning. And somewhere beneath that beginning, the African wind still whispers through tall grass, speaking to the bones of our ancestors buried deep in the soil. It says, "You left, but you never left me. You belong to me as I belong to you." The earth remembers even when we forget, and when we forget. The winds of time never stop moving. They pass over the old volcanic valleys where the bones of our ancestors lie, through forests reborn from ancient ash, across the deserts that once were seas. And in their eternal passage, they carry a truth that hums beneath all of human history, that everything which was still is. Even when our ancestors left Africa, they carried her in their bones, her rhythm, her patience, her unyielding faith in change. And though their footsteps spread across the continents, though they built new lives beneath different skies, they remained bound to that first sacred lesson. To survive is to adapt, and to adapt is to create. The earth itself has always been our quiet companion in this journey. She does not hurry. She teaches through repetition, through rise and fall, through the slow pulse of renewal. And just as she has renewed herself through fire and flood, so too did humanity renew itself over and over each age, another breath of the same endless cycle. By the time the great migrations had carried our kind into every corner of the globe, the harshness of survival began to ease. We learned not only to follow the land, but to shape it gently, to coax life from soil to sow and harvest. The long nomadic rhythm began to slow, giving way to the first whispers of permanence, the first villages, the first hearths that would burn for generations instead of nights. Somewhere along the banks of a river, perhaps the Nile, perhaps the Tigris, someone noticed that seeds dropped near water grew again, and in that quiet realization, a new era began. We learned to cultivate, to store food, to plan beyond the next sunrise. This was not merely an invention of agriculture. It was the awakening of foresight, the ability to imagine a future, to shape tomorrow from today's labor. With that imagination came art, ritual, and the idea of belonging not only to a group, but to a place. We built with mud and stone. We sang to the rains. We marked the seasons in circles of rock that measured the dance of the sun. The first villages rose like constellations across fertile lands, their fires glowing in the night, like reflections of the stars. Humanity for the first time had a home beyond the body, a home of thought, of continuity, of memory made physical. And still deep within the rhythm of Africa pulsed quietly. Every harvest echoed the ancient gathering of fruit beneath baobab trees. Every fire lit in a hearth was the same fire that once burned in the caves of wonderwork. Every story told beside it carried the echo of the first voices beneath the African night. Civilization did not erase the past, it built upon it. Every wall, every temple, every city rose from the wisdom that had been whispered through millennia. Work together, respect the land, honor time. In the valleys of Egypt, people carved monuments to the sun that had first shaped their world. Along the coast of the Mediterranean, they sailed upon waters that had once carried migrating herds. Across the green hills of Europe and the deserts of Arabia, the same human hands built, wove, and dreamed hands descended from those who had shaped the first tools in the volcanic dust of East Africa. We became many, yet we remained one. Different in tongue, in color, in custom, but all speaking in some ancient part of ourselves, the same silent language of survival and wonder. The earth watched us grow. She watched us build and destroy, wander and return. And through every storm, she reminded us softly, patiently, that we are not separate from her story. Even now, the circle remains unbroken. The genes of those first wanderers flow through every person alive today. Whether in the cool highlands of the Andes or the busy streets of modern cities, the map of our origin is written in our cells. No matter how far we've traveled, no matter how many ages have passed, the line always traces back to Africa, the mother of us all. To know this is not only to understand science, it is to feel kinship. When we gaze into the eyes of another, we are looking across deep time, seeing the reflection of ancestors who once sat together beneath a starlit savanna. The boundaries we draw of tribe, of race, of nation dissolve in the face of that ancient unity. We are threads of the same tapestry woven from the same soil and breath. The resolution of this long story is not an ending, but a remembering. To remember is to return. And to return is not to go backward, but to awaken, to feel again the connection that was never lost. If you could stand now alone in the great Rift Valley, where the first footsteps of humanity pressed into the soft mud, you would feel it. The air still hums with that same ancient warmth. The wind still carries the scent of rain on red soil. The birds still rise and wheel in the same sky that watched the birth of our kind. Nothing has truly vanished. Time folds here, past and present, breathing in unison. You could close your eyes and hear the whispers of all who came before, the laughter of children playing near the fire, the rhythmic song of stone against stone, the sigh of someone looking toward the horizon, imagining what lies beyond. The land remembers them as it remembers you, for you too are part of its memory. You are not merely descended from those early beings, you are their continuation, the next note in their unbroken song. And as you breathe, as your heart beats, you are adding to the rhythm they began, a rhythm that will carry forward long after you as it has since the beginning. The story of why we evolved in Africa is not only about geography or genetics or climate. It is about the tender balance between chance and necessity, about how one place held every element needed for consciousness to bloom. It was a land that offered both kindness and challenge, both danger and abundance. It was a mirror of life itself, unpredictable yet nurturing. We did not emerge there by accident. We emerged there because it was the one place where the earth invited us to grow, and we listened. The heat of the sun forged our endurance, the droughts taught us foresight. The open plains gave us imagination, the endless horizon that whispered, "Go see, become." Africa was never just a birthplace. It was the first teacher, and the lesson was, love for the land, for change, for the endless rhythm of existence. That lesson endures. It hums beneath our modern noise, waiting to be remembered. Someday the cities will fade, the roads will crack, the monuments we have built will crumble back into dust. But the story will remain, carried by wind and water, written in stone, whispered in the silence between stars. Because the story of humanity is not about what we have built, but what we have learned, that life is fragile, that connection is sacred, that the earth and we are one. When the last light of evening fades and the night spreads soft and wide across the world, the same constellations that guided our ancestors still hang above us. The same moon still rises, the same oceans breathe, the same wind moves through the trees. And somewhere in that eternal rhythm, Africa still calls, not as a memory but as a presence, a pulse beneath the surface of everything. You can feel it when you close your eyes, the slow, ancient heartbeat of the land that made us. It beats in every breath, in every whisper of wind, in every quiet act of survival and grace. We were born of the earth, and to her we will always return. And so the story resolves not in conclusion, but in calm, a soft understanding that we are still part of the same becoming that began millions of years ago, that evolution is not finished, that every dawn is another beginning. Africa is not behind us. She is within us. She is us. And as the stars begin to fade and sleep drifts closer, her voice returns once more, warm, patient, eternal. You are my children. You have always been. And wherever you go, I am the ground beneath your feet, the wind in your lungs, the light that calls you home. The night has fallen again. The stars shimmer softly above a sleeping world, their light older than memory, older than the rise of humankind itself. The earth turns gently beneath them, the same earth that once held the bare feet of our ancestors as they walked through the tall grass of Africa, carrying the weightless wonder of becoming something new. The story now returns to stillness. The long arc of time slows, folding back into silence. What began with fire and wind and the first fragile heartbeat now drifts toward peace. The quiet understanding that we are both ancient and newborn, both fleeting and eternal. If you listen, you can almost hear it, the sound of deep time. It does not roar or thunder. It hums, softly, patiently, like the breath of the world itself. Beneath the soil of Africa, the bones of our beginnings rest in layers, bones of Australopithecus, of Homo habilis, of Homo erectus, of Homo sapiens, each one a verse in the same unending song. They are not gone. They are simply sleeping, held by the hands of the earth that shaped them. The rain still falls on those ancient hills. The same rivers still trace their paths through the rift. The wind still moves through the grass as it did 2 million years ago, whispering across time, across generations. And though the world above has changed beyond recognition, cities rising, languages, multiplying stars, mapped and named, the foundation remains the same. Life still hums with the same rhythm that began there in the warmth of the equatorial sun, in the patient turning of seasons. Every living being, every thought, every breath that fills the lungs tonight is part of that same pulse, one long inhale and exhale stretching across eternity. Imagine now that you are standing at the edge of a great river, not of water, but of time. It glows faintly in the starlight, flowing silently through the dark. When you step toward it, you see that its current carries images, scenes drifting like reflections. Hands shaping stone feet pressing into dust, a fire flickering against the walls of a cave. You kneel and the surface ripples. Within its depth you see faces, not strangers, but something familiar. Their eyes are your eyes. Their pulse is your pulse. The river continues to flow, carrying your reflection among theirs. There is no separation, only continuation, the gentle merging of all that ever was. You realize here that time is not a line but a circle, that every ending is a return, that the beginning of life still lives within you and always will. And so you let go. You let the river carry you slowly, peacefully into the wide ocean of everything. The ocean does not rush. It holds. It gathers every drop of rain, every tear, every heartbeat, every spark of life, and folds them into itself. Beneath its surface lies the memory of the earth, the echo of volcanoes, the breath of forests. Long vanish the soft murmurs of the first human voices carried by wind and wave. You are drifting now within it, weightless, timeless, free. There is no before or after, only presence, only stillness, only being. This is what the earth has always taught, that life is not separate things but one great, breathing whole. That the same dust that built the mountains flows in your blood. That the same sunlight that warmed the savannas still warms your skin. That even the stars above you were born from the same cosmic fire that made your heart beat. In this vast, quiet expanse, you begin to feel small but beautifully so, like a whisper carried through eternity, like a wave returning to the sea. The night deepens, the fires of the world fade to embers, the air cools. You lie down upon the earth, feeling her heartbeat beneath you, slow, ancient, steady. The soil is warm. The grass moves softly against your skin. Above you, the sky unfolds full of stars, full of memory. Your eyes grow heavy. Your breath slows in rhythm with the pulse beneath the ground. You are no longer watching history. You are inside it. You are the continuation of every creature that walked every dream, that began every question that ever rose from silence. The story of evolution is not behind you. It moves through you, through every cell, every breath, every quiet thought. Each inhalation carries the air your ancestors once breathed. Each exhalation returns it to the same wind that shaped the world. You are part of the same cycle, the same endless exchange. And as you breathe, the boundaries blur between you and the world, between waking and sleep, between past and forever. Sleep begins to gather around you now, soft as dusk, tender as memory. In this space between waking and dreaming, you return once more to that ancient land, to Africa. You see it as it was, the horizon, vast and gold, the plains whispering in the heat, the distant shape of mountains glowing red beneath a lowering sun. The air hums with insects. The scent of rain drifts in from far away. You see the first fires, small flickering sacred lighting, the faces of those who came before. Their shadows move like dance, their laughter rises softly, their eyes reflect the stars. You walk among them and they do not fear you. They recognize you. They nod as though to say, "You remember. You have not forgotten." They point toward the horizon, not to send you away, but to remind you that the journey never ends. You are both the traveler and the destination, both the question and the answer. The earth hums around you, low and deep, like the pulse of the universe. It sings of continuity, of love, of belonging. And as the sound fades, you lie once more beneath the same sky they once knew. You close your eyes, and the world continues to turn. Somewhere far away in the quiet of the night, the same constellations still drift across the heavens. Orion the hunter, Sirius the blazing star, the Southern Cross guarding the ancient horizon. They shine as they did for Homo erectus, for Homo sapiens, for every being who ever looked up in wonder. Their light crosses millions of years to reach you, light that began its journey before our kind learned to dream. And when it touches your skin, it becomes part of you, joining the long story of light that began in the heart of Africa and now burns softly behind your closed eyes. The cradle of humanity has become a cradle of stars. The dust of our beginnings now drifts through galaxies. The same atoms that once formed the bones of Lucy now move through oceans and clouds and hearts. Nothing is lost. Everything transforms. In this truth lies peace. Now the voice of time itself grows quiet. The wind softens. The stars drift farther away, shimmering like distant embers. And you, the listener, become part of that silence, a small spark, returning to the warmth of its origin. Sleep gathers you gently like a mother lifting her child. You feel yourself sink not downward but inward into the deep stillness that connects all things. You are no longer apart from the story. You are the story. Every thought dissolves into calm. Every breath is a wave, retreating softly to shore. Every heartbeat is an echo of that first pulse that began beneath the African sun. The story continues even here in rest, for sleep is only another form of returning, another turning of the great wheel. The earth breathes with you. The stars hum above you. And in that harmony, everything is whole. Breathe once more, slowly, gently. You are home. You have always been home. The wind moves across the plains, the same wind that once brushed against the faces of the first humans. It carries the same whisper through time, the same lullaby. Sleep now, child of the earth. You are safe. You are loved. You are endless. You are endless.